morning and welcome back to Rise and Shine, powered by Thrive IQ Solutions, helping leaders thrive smarter and lead stronger. Our leadership programs help organizations build clarity, stability, and leadership strength at every level. I am Dr. Claire A. Rene, your emotional intelligence and leadership development strategist, and the curator of a conversation that professionals and leaders have needed for a very long time. Now, today's conversation is one I've been looking forward to because it's one most women are living, but very few are having out loud. Leading through transition. Who do you become when everything has shifted? We are not talking about change management. We're not talking about pivots or rebranding. We're talking about the kind of transition that touches your body, your identity, your image, and your interior world all at once. The kind that asks you something without warning. Who are you now? I have brought 3 women into this circle, into this conversation, and they hold a distinct piece of this conversation. Together, what they offer is something rarely available in one room: the clinical truth, the behavioral science, the image intelligence, and the emotional framework to help you not just survive this season, but lead from within. Allow me to introduce our Vanguard Circle of Ambassadors. As you know, we have Miss Katrina. She is our image and brand authority. Katrina is an expert in what transition does to a woman's visual identity and how intentional style becomes a tool for confidence and command, especially when the body is changing. Now, our medical expert and clinical authority, Princess. Princess Locke brings the clinical lens, the hormonal truth of perimenopause and menopause, and why so many high-achieving women are navigating this stage without a name for what they're experiencing. And finally, we have Miss Christina. Christina is our behavioral health authority. Christina is the behavioral science voice in this room. What this transition does to routine, self-regulation, and consistency, and how one intentional practice can anchor a woman through this shift. And as you know, I bring the lens of emotional intelligence, the framework I've spent over 14 years developing and practicing, which asks not just how we manage ourselves through a transition, but who are we choosing to become inside of it. Welcome, ladies. Welcome to Her Inner Advantage Conversations. Today, we are going to talk about a very important topic. This topic is something that is very personal to me, and one of the reasons why I brought the ladies together as experts to help us navigate through some of our challenges. The topic today is leading through transition. Who do you become when everything has shifted? All right. This is such an important topic. I wanted to start out here because I think that this is a question underneath every other question we have as women leaders. When we talk about transition, specifically this season that so many women in this room are navigating, the presenting problem is rarely the problem. When I see my clients and speak to women in my industry, I see women who are still producing, still leading, still showing up, but quietly and sometimes not so quietly, right? I wanted to talk about, what we're going through, because sometimes we've lost the thread to push forward and we want our questions answered. Now, the problem is real, especially after a certain age. I know that after speaking to my primary care providers, going to the doctor, being diagnosed with so many chronic illnesses, I had questions. And these questions were beyond just prescriptions that were given to me. The problem is real. And as a professional, as a researcher, I wanted to know more about what I was going through. Now, this problem is an identity gap also, because we want to perform the way we used to perform. We want to be able to still provide the same leadership efforts and keep it moving. We want to manage all of this as it's just an external situation, right? And still perform to a capacity that we're used to. But we know that that is not the case, all right? So today we're going to reveal some of the issues that we're going through as women, and we want to have the ability to take the first step and name it. Let's put a name to it. Since I'm bringing you first because you're our clinical expert, right? When a woman comes to you in a perimenopausal or menopause stage, what is the real problem she's walking in with? Even if she doesn't have the language for it yet, what is it called? Because I know for me, it was anxiety. For me, it was high blood pressure. For me, it was my shoulder aching. It was, I mean, I could go on and on with all the different symptoms, and they would just say, well, do this x-ray, do this, take this medication, take this, not knowing that it was really the stage I was in. In the meantime, I still had to push as a leader. Talk to us, Princess, and let us know what we're naming it.
So it's a menopausal transitional period, and we've identified that this period of time can happen anywhere between the ages of 35 to 55. And we really are starting to call it more of a transitional period because we know is that it's an experience that is natural to life. The label that goes with it is more associated to the symptoms. Where I find that patients are experiencing vasomotor symptoms can be hot flashes. 80% of women will experience in some period of menopause, whether that be perimenopause, menopause itself, or transitional periods, even earlier, based on surgical intervention that are happening now more to women and causing them to experience more vasomotor symptoms. But 80% will experience some of this hot flashes, night sweats, sleep, fatigue. We also are seeing a rise in women at the age of 40 starting to say, maybe I have a focus problem. Maybe it's an undiagnosed attention deficit issue. That has been a big one on the radar recently. They're whipping out more checklists. They're having the inability not to focus. And as you stated, the other one that's rising is heart disease. In a recent study by the American Heart Association, it was identified in 2019 that 74% of deaths were associated in women was related to heart disease. So to say it's something that needs to be a precedence and a conversation, what I say is what we call it is the transitional period of menopause, a natural life event, but causes a big impact to the executive woman.
Oh, wow. Yep. Exactly. That I agree. I definitely agree. And I'm sure a lot of women agree because it seems like the symptoms that we were dealing with or we are dealing with were more like mistaken for character flaws, right? Now that you're reframing it this way, I know it's landing for a lot of women now. You know, that sometimes I felt like my body was betraying me. You know, I was looking at a Instagram post and they mentioned a lot of symptoms that we did not know were signs of perimenopause. Driving anxieties, frozen shoulder, hives without allergies, vertigo. I was diagnosed with vertigo, right? So had to go through therapy for that. I can go on and on, as you know. And what I felt at that moment, and I'll use myself as a muse for this situation, I felt like my body was failing me, right? But not knowing it was actually communicated. So Christina Rose, what would that be for women who are resonating with this topic and what I had to go through, and I'm sure all of you have also, or going through it, how would you name it?
Disorientation, mentally, physically, emotionally. So especially as women get into their 30s, and especially if they've been focused on achievement, career, moving forward, a lot of like external goalposts. They've gotten to a routine, they've gotten to a flow, and they know what they're capable of. They know what their body needs and wants. So when we get to that potential transition of a perimenopause symptom, and the interesting thing is they're not the same for everybody. There's such a range. And so maybe they've heard their best friend have X, Y, and Z, but they have A, B, C. So is this what it really is? What is this? You know, we haven't been given the opportunity to learn about how individual this is, how it affects people so differently. So the disorientation is real. And then at the same age, we're often dealing with either parents who are having their own health issues, sometimes children who are various ages, and especially if they're adolescents, there's all of that extra.
Oh, yeah.
You know, to deal
tournaments, with volleyball, yes, all of that.
And then trying to potentially keep a very intensive, demanding career. So it feels like the first step is disorientation and wonderment and questioning of why I'm tired all the time, why I'm having these strange warm flashes, why I'm craving certain foods, why I'm having weight gain. So that's, I think, the first step, the confusion.
Yes, I agree. Now you mentioned one big one, weight gain. And I felt that, you know, going through that experience, it was so sudden, but it wasn't. It was subtle, right? All of it was a byproduct of that stage, right? Perimenopause, in my case, menopause stage. It definitely influenced me, especially how I dressed, right? Katrina, help us out because, you know, from where you sit in the world of image and brand, where does the real problem show up for women in this stage? Because I was just hiding that little fupa or the extra weight. And I found it difficult fitting into those pants and, wearing heels and leaving the home feeling confident. And that did not feel good when I had to show up and show out. Can you help us out
Yeah,
today?
it shows up in hiding for sure. When the weight gain comes, like you said, the muffin top, having a little bit more belly than you used to,
Mm,
having a little bit more thighs in your arms. So it really shows up in those areas and hiding where you are right now in life instead of embracing it. So for me, that's where it shows up.
yeah, absolutely. And
I
it never goes where you really want it to go too.
Yeah, and I
That's
was
the
gonna
truth.
say, yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. I would say in that hiding time, the women they think that they're hiding the big stomach, or you would say, or the fupa, or the arms and all those
Hmm.
things. They think they're hiding, but they're really not. They're kind of the clothes that they're deciding kind of accentuate, like your stomach is a little big or you have a little muffin top. So that's where I would come in, to help them to find the silhouettes that work for them.
Yeah, that's true. And don't forget the saggy skin, but
Oh,
let's don't bring that
listen,
back up.
I
Oh,
can
you're
attest to
tight,
the
so you don't have to worry.
no, I am not. I can attest to the
Mm,
night sweats,
Yeah,
hot flashes, and I tell my children all the time, my face is a little too loose for me now. So I don't
okay.
know. We'll see.
You look great. So what we do have to realize is that our wardrobe becomes a mirror, right? It reflects back exactly where we are emotionally, especially
Mhm.
as leaders, in not just the way we dress, but our behaviors too. So Christina Rose, going back to behavior, help our women, our collective, recognize these patterns, right? So what does that look like in real life?
Well, behavior is influenced by so many externals.
Hmm.
Not only how we're feeling about ourselves during this potential time of abrupt and sudden changes that we can't just force and think our way out of. So, really high functioning, highly successful people are used to kind of forcing it through and making it happen. I'm tired, that's okay, I'll still do this 12-hour day. I can still check everything off the list. But then suddenly, this very imposing wall where the body is screaming no, the mind is screaming no, the emotions are screaming no. So, wow, I cannot just force myself any longer. And that can be really scary when that's the first time hitting this kind of obstacle has taken place in this kind of depth. Meeting the behavior in a realistic fashion. That is important. Saying, this is my reality. Not pretending it's not there, not being in denial. I mean, people will do that. They'll deny it's there until it's become a big problem, right? Until it becomes complicated medically. Depression, anxiety become like overpowering and it's starting to affect daily functioning. The stress levels just cannot be contained. So recognizing it and naming it. I think the symptoms
Hmm.
and realizing that for so many people, this is part of the hormonal change process. And our society does not do a good job in supporting
Yeah,
us ladies, in these changes and transitions. So I think this talk, where we're all bringing our experience to the table, is helping name and address that, and recognizing it. Yeah, you are not delusional. You are really experiencing something real.
absolutely. Years back, I spoke to a more seasoned leader when I was working at a corporate office, and she brought up an interesting fact. She was not promoted. She had the qualifications, but she blamed it on ageism. And at that point, I didn't really understand. But I would think that her age would have brought maturity to the role. It would have brought expertise, experience, knowledge, different knowledge base, definitely experience to the role. And she was highly respected. So now I get it, right? I think it has more to do as dealing with the physical elements of it, not really the mental or the knowledge aspect of it, her competency. And sometimes it's viewed as a weakness externally, and then therefore we view as a weakness. It's something we don't talk about, so we just push harder and harder, which is the opposite of what we should be doing at this time. And that's why She Leads EQ is so important, because we're teaching and we're helping women relearn that their strength comes internally, and that we don't have to always use the testosterones. We don't always have to use our masculine energy, but sometimes we feel like we're proving something because we have unprocessed trauma, right? We're dealing with unprocessed trauma as a woman leader, that we have to prove ourselves at a different level than our male counterparts. So we show up as them. and not as ourselves, not knowing the real jewel, the real power is internal and not external or emulating our male counterparts. And so that's why we sometimes even emulate the way we dress, right? We wear the jackets and we wear the pants and we show up that way. Well, Katrina, can you show us how it shows up in the corporate life when we're trying to emulate our male counterparts in the way we show up in dress?
I most definitely think it comes in the way that you look. A lot of women will defer to pants, and they will defer to a pantsuit instead of being more feminine with a dress or with a skirt or even a more flowy type of pant. They would get a very structured, tailored suit to emulate that man. They may put on pumps sometimes, but most of them
Absolutely.
are going to do loafers, and I don't think that we should do that. You know, we were designed to be women. We were designed to be feminine. We are the polar opposite of men. So when it comes to how we present ourselves, any of us can walk in that room with full of suits, and we can walk in with a beautiful floral dress or a floral suit and be ourselves, and we can move and own the room just like they can. So I really do think that women defer to wearing a suit, and they defer to the navy. They defer to the gray. They defer to the black. They defer to solid colors to really fit in or just kind of blend in a room with those men. And as women, we shouldn't have to do that. And
No.
I just don't think that we should.
No, we shouldn't. And also, I wanted to, what does a woman in this stage look like when she opens her closet in the morning? If you can answer that part for me.
Well, hopefully you all tuned in last week, but if not, I'm going to say it that she has to be organized. And sometimes when we're in a real life situation, like we spoke about earlier, like you said earlier, if that weight gain comes in, if she's going between a 14 and a 16, she has only 14s in her closet, she could be, just, I would say, not really disappointed, but when she walks in that closet, she can I have nothing to wear. Nothing fits.
No.
And that kind of put a little, what do you call it, your balloon? It deflates your balloon.
It does.
When you walk in your closet and you don't have anything to wear, when you really don't have anything to wear because you have gained weight. It really shifts, how you wake up in the morning, and it can put a different weight on you, like Christina Rose was saying earlier, that a weight that people may not understand how frustrating it is for you to walk in your closet and you cannot find anything to wear, not because you don't have anything, but because you can't fit anything.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
people don't understand that. They don't understand how frustrating that is, how heavy that is for a woman when she's gained 10 to 15 pounds and she really cannot wear anything in her closet. So that's when we defer to hiding in the black and the navy. She just keeps it simple just to even get by.
Yes. Explain to our women leader as they're going through this transition that this is not a vanity issue, right? Because a lot of women, including myself, I'm like, well, I shouldn't really have to put so much weight on how I look. Maybe I'm putting too much on my image, right? I have other things to worry about, right? Being a mother and, doing other things and participating in different roles, right? So is it vanity, or is self-care really important as part of our
Well,
image?
I don't really go. I believe self-care is important. It's different for everyone. It's different for all of us. My self-care may be different from your self-care. But what I do believe is, as a woman, we should be concerned about how we look. That's not vanity, but it can fall into vanity. And it could fall into, idleness of how you present yourself. And to me, what I mean is coming to an idol where you feel like you have to wear all the designer clothes. Every time you walk in a room, you have to have a designer bag, you have to have designer shoes, or you have to have some type of label. And to me, that's where it gets into be more a idol thing and a vanity thing.
Get it. I
So
got it.
there's a difference,
Absolutely.
because some women can shop at Zara, like you said, you still shop at Express,
I do.
and you find the pieces in there. I tell people it's not really where you shop. Do you have an eye to select the right things in that store? It could be Walmart, but do you have an eye to go into Walmart and select the right dress or select the right pair of pants? I think that's, what the difference is. We don't want it to become an idol, because if you're married, your husband's going to be mad because every time you turn around, you feel like you have
Find a
the
new purse.
next big bag. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Or it could become like, I'm not vanity, but I do want to look well when I walk out of my house. When I go
Absolutely.
with my children, when I go to dinner, when I'm with my friends, or when I'm
In the
taking
boardroom.
myself to lunch, I want to look good for me. And if you
Absolutely.
keep it, if it's about you and not impressing everyone else, then that's where the difference
Yeah, that's the confidence you're talking about. So, Princess,
Mhm.
please paint the clinical picture for us. What does the women navigating the stages look like when she's coming, when they're coming through your doors?
Well, and that's why I wanted to play off what Katrina said, because as she stated, the closet and the sizing, because what we have identified, and a lot of this information can too be found on the Menopause Society. They have a great platform for education. What we also know is in the final 2 years before a woman stops her menstrual period, she actually has the highest rise in visceral fat. She actually
Mm,
loses lean muscle and gains mid-abdominal fat, right? And this happens on a rapid incline in that last
it
couple of
does.
years. So, we actually can state that we know that visceral fat begins to rise, increasing risk for insulin resistance, hence the reason why her cholesterol, heart disease risk goes up, and diabetes risk. So where I also partner in that change is helping to understand a shared model in collaboration for non-scale victories, which is what made me think of when Katrina talked about what we identify in our closet and what we see. I have my patients complete an in-body analysis, and that way then we're looking at skeletal muscle mass, we're looking at visceral fat, we're looking at water, extracellular versus intracellular, and then percentage of body fat. Because when you work on alignment, you may not see a scale victory, but the non-scale victory may be, and I will put it down as a measurable goal, is that I normally wear a 16 and I'm now at a 14. I put on my bra and I was able to make the snaps a little closer. I took pictures of my face and saw the inflammation leave. And those are NSVs, and those are just as worthy as a physical scale movement. And so that's why I really love that Katrina outlined that. So sometimes I'll tell them to keep a transition pair of clothing, because some will hold on to one pair of jeans that they got to fit in. Your body is going to change, but you are still a powerhouse, an executive, a leader. You are beautiful inside and out, and we're not going to let that only be the thing that defines you.
So basically, what we're talking about is a lot of high functioning on the outside, right, ladies? But we're really struggling in silence on the inside. And the fact that it seems like we, as women, especially leaders, professionals, experts, right, we're doing our thing and we pretty much normalize the symptoms. I just came back from the doctor's visit, my annual. Some things were good, some things not too good. CP made me realize that I really am normalizing some of my symptoms, and that's not good,
Mm.
right? I have to do
Mm-hmm.
better. I'm doing better than last year, but I can do better going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And just identifying it, naming it. Yes, I'm going to name it. High blood pressure. I'm naming it. Other chronic illnesses. I want to get off the prescriptions. I'm doing the natural stuff while balancing the prescription so I can do it in the best way that would benefit me overall. But, with that being said, Princess, I'm sure you hear this story over and over again. What that one thing a woman leader can do, that professional, the judge, the teacher, CEO, that founder who's struggling through her new business, but her health is declining due to the stress. What can we do to help elevate our women collective?
Is identifying a provider. You have to get into care. Direct primary care concierge models are coming in. They've now approved the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology the use of hormone therapy in women over the age of 55. This is a generational, overwhelming feeling because it was preached for so long that it was bad or it was related to breast cancer. What we now know is that actually harms us with the loss of estrogen, progesterone, and declines in testosterone, bone density, visceral fat, emotional instability, and that's when we see the rise of hypertension, diabetes, and insulin resistance goes up. So what I say is that the most important thing is finding a provider that won't mask your symptoms or put a label, but will explore those with you. I think it's important that you journal, and then, there's so many out of the box ways to approach it. Hormone therapy is meant to be a collective conversation, a collaborative conversation with your provider. But you do need to begin exploring this. Identify in your
Awesome.
workplace. If you are a high
Yes,
functioning
you're
leader,
right.
do you currently have any protocols in place as an executive that support the women in your workplace having support with dealing with vasomotor symptoms? It's a conversation. So those would be the biggest ones I would say is, instead of feeling alone, we know it's a transition. We know what rises and we know what we lose. The control starts with you identifying what are you first going to do in the next 90 days to see someone.
You do practice in a concierge therapy, right? You do visit your clients and you do really go in and help your clients in a more personalized way, right, Princess? And these are the services that you offer.
Yes. So, direct primary care concierge model is one that expands looking at both the primary care, but also being able to provide collaborative care that looks at the whole person. So, it's not the point that I don't have a practice location. However, I'm not just going to check some of the routine blood work. We also are going to make sure we look at seeing your hormones, including also looking at diabetes. I'm going to look at your vitamin D and your vitamin D. We're going to see you as a whole and be able to provide you that information. Your primary care, typically just focused on wellness, may only look at just your routine labs, which include, usually lipid panel, which is cholesterol. They'll check the diabetes markers, kidney, liver function, and then you're done with those blood work and you go, great, I'm a pre-diabetic, I need to lose 30 pounds, and they just told me I might have hypertension. But doc basically said, awesome. I'm okay. Try to walk more, stay away from the fried fatty foods, work on that safe. And if you need something for depression, I can write you something for that. But I didn't actually give you any tools to work through. So you may need to look at a collaborative outside approach, whether that be functional integrative medicine, whether that be you want to exhaust through your insurance, both your primary care and your OBGYN. Finding a gynecological provider that doesn't specialize in OB anymore is a benefit, because then you're not competing with women who are pregnant. You're having someone who's now focusing only on gynecology. That's always a big one. So if you're not wanting to do a DPC model, you want to find your practitioner who also is now going to look at the next part of life.
And I love, this is one thing that stood out from our previous conversation, our very first conversation, Princess, is that you give women that moment. You give them the knowledge, but you also give them the permission to do that and ask those questions and continue to do the research with them. Awesome. And Christina, behaviorally, what is that one practice that would stabilize our women, collective members through this transitional 100%. Period?
Well, because everyone's an individual and everyone's going to have a different comfort level.
Just one.
there's different ways we can go. Obviously, conventional counseling is what some people want. They want a place to vent openly, confidentially, and they just need to get it out with some potential, feedback. There's also health and wellness coaching, which really targets and focuses more on the day-to-day activities, supports the medical treatment plan, and identifies doable goals, especially SMART goals, which are much more effective in having long-term positive outcomes. Not just like vague goals, very detailed goals. Otherwise, sometimes it's like finding a group of like-minded women. They have groups now for women going through some of these hormonal changes, and they're finally, wow, somebody actually understands and is listening, and we can share this, bumpy path together. And then we're going to be hopefully in the near future doing workshops to support women in detail about some of the practical day-to-day things we can assist them with and personalize it so every woman can take what we are offering and find the ones that resonate and connect to them. So it might be movement, it might be more activities, it might be more social things, it might be having more downtime, alone time, travel finally. A lot of the stuff and activities that women have wanted to do for so long have been on the back burner, whether it's work, family, etc. So how do we bring these lifelong bucket list goals more to the top of the list, step by step?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for bringing that up, because that is imperative that we start to prioritize some of our enjoyable desires too. We want to have those special moments as we can with our loved ones. Thank you for bringing that up, Christina. And Katrina, top it off for us. Last but not least, please talk to that executive, that advanced professional woman, and speak directly to her. What would you want her to walk away knowing when it comes to her image, her confidence, her presence?
Well, first I would say that you need to give yourself some grace. We all go through a weight gain. That's just life. It's what it is. Most of us go through a 10-pound weight gain kind of like through our entire life. And if you have some other medical issues, it may be larger. So it's okay to buy that pair of pants that's a size larger. It's okay to buy that dress that's a size larger, or that top, so that you can feel good about yourself when you walk in your closet, that you at least have something to wear. that show yourself some grace. And if it becomes too much for you, hire someone.
Yep.
Just don't do it.
Absolutely.
Forget about it. You talk to the
Hire
person.
us. We'll help you
Yeah,
through it.
exactly.
Absolutely.
All four of us.
All four of us
And
collectively.
sometimes that's what it takes. I know women that had every single last one of us, they have, because it becomes to a place where it just begins to be too overwhelming. And just like when you're on the airplane,
Yes, ma'am.
they tell you to put the mask on yourself first,
And then you can
before
help
you do
others.
it to anyone else.
Absolutely.
So take care of you first. Show yourself some grace. Buy a couple of things in the next size up. You won't die, I promise you. You'll be okay.
You'll be
And you-
fine. Absolutely. Thank you so much,
You'll be
ladies. Appreciate your
fine. You'll be
contribution for
fine.
today's topic. I love it. I know it's going to be so helpful. Someone needed to hear this, and I'm glad it's coming from us, the experts, right? And we, like Katrina said, we have to give ourselves grace and push forward, but push with knowledge, with power, and understand that the power is inner, right? It's an inner advantage. Thank you, ladies, for joining us, and see you next week. I want to close with this. Transition will always be part of the story. The question is never whether it comes. It is whether you are willing to let it shape you into something more true. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not losing ground. You are becoming. And that is the process. And that process, when you stop fighting it and start to regulate it, it's one of the most extraordinary things you will ever lead. Now, I want to personally invite you to something in May. We are gathering in person for the She Leads EQ Breakfast in Central Florida. Now, this is not a typical networking event. This is not a conference. This is a curated room of advanced professionals and executive women who are done performing and ready to lead from a deeper place. You will have the opportunity to experience myself, Katrina, Princess, and Christina in person. Our expertise, our energy, and our presence. And you will sit in a room where the conversation we started today continues at a level that only happens face to face. The details are coming soon. Watch for them and begin making room for it now, because the women in that room will not be the same women who walk out of it. Thank you to our Vanguard Circle, once again, Katrina, Princess, Christina, for showing up with your full expertise and your full truth today. This is what it looks like when women lead together. This is her Inner Vantage conversation. Thank you for joining me on Rise and Shine Coffee Break with Dr. Rene, where leadership insights are poured like our coffee. Strong, no sugar, and always fresh.